What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars sits down for what should be a lighthearted chat show appearance only to find herself defending her entire career against unexpected criticism? The tension in the studio was palpable as Margot Robbie faced questions that went far beyond the usual promotional script. What started as friendly banter quickly escalated into something much more serious, with both women refusing to back down from their positions. By the end of this interview, one of them would be walking off set, leaving audiences stunned and social media exploding with reactions. Before we dive into exactly what went wrong, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what you think really caused this clash between two of entertainment's most beloved figures. The Kelly Clarkson show had been running smoothly that Tuesday afternoon. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement as they waited for the next guest to appear. Kelly sat comfortably in her signature armchair, her warm smile ready to welcome another celebrity to her daytime talk show stage. Our next guest needs absolutely no introduction, Kelly announced to her audience with genuine enthusiasm. She's conquered Hollywood with her incredible range from comedy to drama, and she's here today to talk about her latest project. Please give a huge welcome to the amazing Margot Robbie. The audience erupted in applause as Margot walked onto the set, waving graciously to the crowd. She settled into the guest chair across from Kelly, crossing her legs and flashing that famous smile that had charmed audiences worldwide. "Margot, thank you so much for being here," Kelly began, her voice carrying its usual warmth. "I have to say, I'm such a huge fan of your work. You've really established yourself as one of the most versatile actresses of your generation." "Thank you, Kelly. That's very kind of you to say," Margot replied, her Australian accent adding charm to her words. "I'm thrilled to be here. I've watched your show for years, and I've always admired how genuine you are with your guests." Kelly beamed at the compliment. "Well, that means the world coming from you. Now let's talk about your new film. I understand you're not just starring in it, but also producing it through your production company. That must be incredibly fulfilling." "It really is," Margot said, leaning forward slightly with genuine passion in her voice. "Having control over the stories we tell and the way we tell them has become so important to me. There are so many incredible female voices that deserve to be heard, and I want to be part of amplifying those voices." "That's wonderful." Kelly nodded approvingly. I have to ask though, there's been some talk in the industry about how certain projects are being green-lit these days. Some people feel that there's almost a quota system happening where studios are more focused on checking boxes than on actual storytelling quality. Margot's smile faltered just slightly, though she maintained her composure. "I'm sorry. What do you mean by that exactly?" Kelly shifted in her chair, her tone remaining conversational, but with a slight edge that hadn't been there moments before. "Well, there's this push for diversity and representation, which is great, don't get me wrong, but some critics have argued that it's coming at the expense of merit-based casting and storytelling." The studio audience remained silent, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Margot's posture straightened as she processed Kelly's words. "I think I need you to be more specific about what you're suggesting," Margot said carefully, her media training kicking in as she tried to navigate what was clearly becoming a minefield. "I'm not suggesting anything negative," Kelly replied with a slight laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm just curious about your thoughts on how the industry has changed. Some people feel that certain actresses are getting opportunities, not necessarily because they're the best choice for the role, but because they fit a particular demographic that studios are trying to appeal to." Margot's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Are you asking me if I think I've gotten roles because I'm a woman, Kelly?" No, of course not." Kelly backtracked quickly, but then pressed forward anyway. "You're obviously incredibly talented. I'm talking more about the broader trend in Hollywood. Surely you've noticed how different things are now compared to when you started your career." "Different how?" Margot's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath now. Kelly seemed to realize she was walking into dangerous territory, but something compelled her to continue. "Well, there's definitely more pressure to be politically correct these days. Studios are scared of social media backlash if they don't cast diverse enough or if their stories don't hit certain talking points." "I see," Margot said slowly, her Australian accent becoming more pronounced, as it often did when she was holding back emotion. "So, you think that my success and the success of other actresses might be more about politics than talent?" The audience was now completely silent, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a knife. Kelly realized she had pushed too far, but seemed unable to stop herself. "That's not what I'm saying at all," Kelly insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation about how the industry works now. An honest conversation, Margot repeated, her tone growing cooler by the second. Kelly, I have to say, this feels less like an honest conversation, and more like you're suggesting that actresses like me are somehow getting handouts instead of earning our place. Kelly's face flushed slightly as she realized how her words were being interpreted. Margot, I think you're misunderstanding me. Am I? Margot challenged, leaning back in her chair with her arms crossed, because it sounds to me like you're questioning the legitimacy of not just my career, but the careers of countless other women who've worked incredibly hard to get where they are. The camera captured every micro-expression as the interview spiraled further from its intended lighthearted tone. Kelly looked genuinely rattled now, clearly not having expected this level of pushback from her usually gracious guests. Look, I didn't mean to offend you, Kelly said, trying to regain control of the interview, but her voice betrayed her nervousness. I was just making an observation about the industry as a whole. An observation, Margot repeated, her tone sharp now. Kelly, let me share an observation with you. I've been acting professionally for over a decade. I've auditioned for hundreds of roles, been rejected more times than I can count, and worked my way up from Australian soap operas to where I am today. Are you suggesting that journey was somehow easier because of current political trends? Kelly shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Of course not. Your talent speaks for itself. Then why bring it up at all? Margot pressed, her media polish beginning to crack as genuine frustration seeped through. Why sit here and suggest that there's some kind of quota system affecting casting decisions? Do you think directors and producers are just randomly selecting actresses based on demographics rather than ability? I'm not saying that, Kelly insisted, but she was clearly floundering. I'm saying the industry has pressures now that didn't exist before. Pressures like what? Pressure to actually give women meaningful roles. Pressure to tell stories that represent more than just one narrow perspective. Margot's voice was rising slightly, though she maintained her professional composure. Because if those are the pressures you're concerned about, then maybe we have very different ideas about what makes good cinema. The studio audience was captivated by this unexpected turn. Many had their phones out already filming what was clearly becoming a viral moment. The producers behind the cameras were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial. Kelly took a deep breath, seemingly trying to reset the conversation. Margot, I think we're getting off track here. I have enormous respect for you and your work. Do you, though? Margot challenged. Because suggesting that my success might be tied to political correctness rather than merit doesn't sound very respectful to me. That's not what I meant, Kelly said, her frustration beginning to show. But you have to admit that the conversation around diversity in Hollywood has changed dramatically in recent years. And thank goodness for that, Margot shot back. For decades, this industry excluded incredible talent simply because people didn't look a certain way or tell stories that fit into a very narrow box. If you're upset that those barriers are finally being broken down, then maybe you need to examine why that bothers you so much. Kelly's face flushed deeper. I'm not upset about diversity. I support diversity, but I also think we should be able to have honest conversations about how these changes are being implemented without being accused of being against progress. Honest conversations, Margot said, her voice dripping with skepticism. Is that what you call questioning whether successful women have actually earned their positions? Because that doesn't feel very honest to me. Kelly, that feels like the same old pattern of undermining women's achievements by suggesting they got help they didn't deserve. Now you're putting words in my mouth, Kelly replied, her own voice becoming more defensive. I never said anything specifically about women. You didn't have to, Margot countered. You're sitting here talking to a successful actress about quota systems and political correctness in casting. The subtext is pretty clear. Kelly looked directly into the camera for a moment, as if trying to appeal to her audience before turning back to Margot. I think you're being overly sensitive about this. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Margot's eyes flashed with genuine anger. Now overly sensitive, she repeated slowly. There it is. The classic dismissal. When a woman stands up for herself and her peers, she's being overly sensitive. That's not what I meant, Kelly said quickly, realizing she just made things infinitely worse. Then what did you mean? Margot demanded. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you invited me here under the pretense of promoting my work, only to question whether I deserve the career I've built. I invited you here because you're a huge star and our viewers love you, Kelly insisted. And yet here we are with you suggesting that my stardom might be more about trends than talent. Margot replied, do you do this with your male guests? Kelly, do you ask them whether they think they've benefited from male privilege in Hollywood? Do you question whether their success is legitimate? Kelly was visibly struggling now, sweat beginning to form on her forehead despite the studio's air conditioning. That's different. How is it different? Margot pressed relentlessly because the conversation around male privilege isn't as prominent in casting discussions. Kelly said, immediately realizing how weak her argument sounded. Exactly my point, Margot said triumphantly. For decades, men have benefited from a system that favored them, but that was never questioned. Now that the playing field is being leveled, suddenly everyone's concerned about merit and fairness. It's incredibly transparent. Kelly tried one more time to salvage the situation. Look, I think we both want the same thing. We want great stories and great performances. Do we though? Margot asked pointedly. Because it seems to me like you want great stories as long as they don't challenge your comfort. So, about who gets to tell them? The silence that followed was deafening. Kelly stared at Margot, clearly unprepared for such a direct confrontation. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. Even the camera operators seemed uncertain about where to focus their lenses. I think you're twisting my words, Kelly finally said, her voice quieter now, but with an edge of defiance. All I was trying to say is that the industry has changed, and sometimes I wonder if we're overcorrecting. Overcorrecting, Margot repeated, shaking her head in disbelief. Kelly, do you have any idea how that sounds? You're essentially saying that giving opportunities to people who were previously excluded is going too far. That's not overcorrecting. That's progress. Kelly's jaw tightened. I'm saying that sometimes it feels like merit takes a backseat to optics. Merit? According to who? Margot shot back immediately. According to the same system that excluded countless talented people for decades. The same system that decided what stories were worth telling based on a very narrow worldview. Look, I've worked in this industry longer than you have, Kelly said, her tone becoming sharper. I've seen how things have changed. Margot's eyebrows shot up. Are you seriously pulling seniority on me right now? As if the length of time you've been in the industry somehow makes your opinion more valid than mine. That's not what I'm doing, Kelly insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Then what are you doing? Margot demanded. Because it seems to me like you're using every dismissive tactic in the book. First, I'm overly sensitive. Now I'm too inexperienced to understand how. The industry really works. What's next? Kelly took a deep breath, clearly trying to compose herself. Margot, I think we've gotten way off track here. This was supposed to be a fun interview about your new project. You're the one who brought up quota systems and political correctness. Margot reminded her coldly. You're the one who turned this into a debate about whether successful women have actually earned their success. Don't blame me for defending myself and my colleagues. I never attacked you personally, Kelly protested. Didn't you? Margot challenged. When you suggest that the industry is prioritizing demographics over talent, and you're saying it to someone who's built their career in that industry, how is that not personal? Kelly looked around the studio desperately, as if hoping someone would rescue her from this situation. I think you're taking this too personally. There it is again, Margot said, her voice filled with incredulous anger. Another classic dismissal. I'm taking it too personally. I'm being overly sensitive, Kelly. When someone questions your professional achievements and suggests they might be based on factors other than your ability, how exactly are you supposed to take that I wasn't questioning your achievements? Kelly said weakly. Yes, you were. Margot replied firmly. Maybe not directly, but the implication was crystal clear. You brought up quota systems and political correctness while interviewing a successful actress. The message is obvious to anyone paying attention. Kelly's face was flushed now. Whether from embarrassment or anger, it was hard to tell. I was trying to have a thoughtful discussion about industry trends. Thoughtful, Margot scoffed. There's nothing thoughtful about perpetuating the idea that women and minorities are getting opportunities they don't deserve. That's just dressed-up prejudice. Now you're calling me prejudiced. Kelly's voice rose for the first time, her composure finally cracking completely. I'm calling your comments prejudiced, Margot clarified, but her tone was steel. Whether you intended them that way or not, that's how they come across. That's completely unfair, Kelly protested, her voice shaking slightly with emotion. What's unfair is having to sit here and defend my right to exist in this industry, Margot replied, her own voice rising to match Kelly's energy. What's unfair is being invited onto a show to promote my work, only to have the host question whether I deserve my career. I never said you don't deserve your career, Kelly insisted desperately. You didn't have to say it directly, Margot shot back. When you talk about quota systems and the implication is that some of us are here for reasons other than talent. When you do that while interviewing successful women, you're essentially questioning our legitimacy. Kelly stood up abruptly from her chair, clearly overwhelmed by the direction the conversation had taken. I think we need to take a break. Margot remained seated, her eyes never leaving Kelly's face. A break won't change what you've already said. Kelly, it won't take back the implications you've made about my career and the careers of countless other women in this industry. I'm trying to be professional here, Kelly said, her voice strained. Professional would have been sticking to questions about my actual work instead of veering into industry politics designed to undermine successful women. Margot replied coolly. Kelly looked toward her producers off camera, clearly seeking guidance. But Margot wasn't finished. You know what, Kelly? I came here in good faith to talk about a project I'm passionate about, a project that tells an important story. Instead, I've spent the last several minutes having to justify my existence in Hollywood. That's not professional. That's not respectful. And frankly, it's beneath both of us. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Kelly remained standing, her hands visibly trembling as she tried to process what was happening to her show. The audience sat in stunned silence, many still recording on their phones, knowing they were witnessing something that would be talked about for months. Margot, please, Kelly said, her voice barely above a whisper. Can we just reset and talk about your film? Margot looked at her with a mixture of disappointment and resolve. You really don't get it, do you? You can't just say what you said and then pretend it didn't happen. You can't question the legitimacy of women's success and then ask us to smile and promote our projects as if nothing happened. I wasn't questioning your legitimacy, Kelly said desperately. But even she seemed to realize how hollow the denial sounded after everything that had been said. Kelly, let me be very clear about something, Margot said, her voice calm but filled with conviction. I have auditioned against hundreds of actresses for every role I've gotten. I've been told I'm to this or not enough, but more times than I can count. I've worked 18-hour days, learned accents, transformed my body, and poured my heart into every character I've played. So, when you sit there and suggest that my success might be about anything other than my work, you're not just insulting me. You're insulting every woman who's fought to be taken seriously in this industry. Kelly's face crumpled slightly. That's not what I meant to do. Intent doesn't erase impact. Margot replied firmly. You may not have meant to undermine successful women, but that's exactly what you did. And the fact that you keep trying to minimize it instead of owning it tells me everything I need to know. I'm not trying to minimize anything, Kelly protested weakly. Yes, you are, Margot said, standing up from her chair now. Her decision clearly made. You've called me overly sensitive. Suggested I'm taking things too personally. Questioned my experience, and now you want to just move on as if this conversation never happened. That's textbook minimization. Kelly looked around the studio frantically. Margot, please don't do this. We can work this out. Work what out? Margot asked, picking up her purse from beside her chair. You've made your position crystal clear. You think the industry is overcorrecting by giving opportunities to people who were previously excluded. You think merit is taking a backseat to optics. Those aren't misunderstandings, Kelly. Those are your actual beliefs. You're putting words in my mouth again, Kelly said. But her voice lacked any real conviction. I'm repeating your words back to you, Margot corrected, slinging her purse over her shoulder. The fact that you don't like how they sound when someone else says them should tell you something about how problematic they were in the first place. Kelly took a step toward her. Please just sit down. Let's finish the interview. Margot shook her head, her expression resolute. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that what just happened is acceptable. I'm not going to smile and promote my film after you've essentially suggested that my career might be built on something other than talent. I never said that, Kelly insisted one final time. You didn't have to, Margot replied, turning toward the edge of the set. The implication was clear enough. Kelly's voice became desperate. Margot, you're a professional. We're both professionals. We can get through this. Margot paused at the edge of the interview area and turned back to face Kelly one last time. You know what's professional, Kelly? Treating your guests with respect, asking questions about their work instead of questioning whether they deserve their careers. What just happened here was the opposite of professional. The cameras captured every moment as Margot walked toward the exit, her heels clicking decisively on the studio floor. Kelly stood frozen in the middle of the set, clearly at a loss for how to salvage the situation. "Margot, please," Kelly called out one more time, but Margot didn't turn around as Margot reached the studio exit. She paused briefly and addressed the audience directly, her voice carrying clearly across the silent studio. "To everyone watching, never let anyone make you question whether you've earned your place at the table. Your success is yours, and you don't owe anyone an explanation for it." With that, she pushed through the studio doors and was gone, leaving Kelly standing alone on her own set. The audience still in shocked silence and the cameras still rolling. Kelly looked directly into the camera, her face pale and her voice shaky as she tried to address her viewers. "We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back." But everyone in that studio knew that nothing would be the same when they came back. The damage was done, the words had been spoken, and one of Hollywood's biggest stars had just walked off one of daytime television's most popular shows. The silence that followed Margot's exit was perhaps the loudest moment in the show's history, and it would echo across social media and entertainment news for weeks to come. What did you think about this clash between two of entertainment's biggest personalities? Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments. Do you think Margot was right to walk off, or should she have stayed to finish the